Director Fredericks is going to pop in for just a few moments. I will stop sharing while he's speaking. So with that, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Wendy. So yeah, good evening, everybody. I just wanted to take a few minutes. First, I want to, again, express my appreciation to all of you for participating in this group, because it is not lost on me what a big commitment it is, and giving up evenings and days to do this. Really do appreciate it, and I can assure you that the commission is very interested in hearing the recommendations of the group. So thank you for that. And you're into your fifth meeting now, and the continued participation of all of you, the dedication, it just says a lot. So thank you very much. I did want to take a minute to address, Ellery had sent an email out to the group recently, and it was a reminder about communications with the commission in this process. So that reminder was in part saying that this group has been brought together to develop consensus recommendations that you can all agree on to advance to the commission. And so part of that process means that we really want to discourage communication with the commissioners in a parallel process, because that could be construed as undermining the broader group effort. And we don't want to do that, because that would erode the trust. And so I do want you to know that I've talked with folks involved in that, and I do not think that there was an effort to undermine the efforts of this group. I think that there was some information shared with the commission, but I also recognize that it wasn't deemed like directly related to what this group is wrestling with. And so I don't necessarily agree with that. It's debatable, but it was innocent enough. So I think the main point that I would like to make is that before this group is formed, you all have every right and should interact with your commissioners and the department staff. And after this group has gone and done its thing, by all means, I would hope and expect that you engage very actively with the commission. Just asking that people remember to put on pause those communications with the commission when this is going on. And again, just to make sure that there's not a perception that there's a parallel effort underway that could appear to be trying to undermine the group. So that's just what I wanted to say. I don't think anybody should make any more of it than what I just said. There was no ill intentions, and it should not undermine the trust and the function of the group. So I think everything is in a good place. That was just a reminder. And I will also own that as we put together groups like this in the future, being explicit about communications with the commission during the time of the group probably would be helpful. We could do better with that. So that's all. And Wendy, I take a question or a comment if there's a need. Otherwise, I am certainly more than happy to let the group get on with tonight's business.
Does anyone need any clarification from the director? Okay, well, thank you very much for joining us, and you can go and take your suit off now.
Okay, thanks again to you all. Have a good evening.
Bye-bye. Okay. Just letting you know that Jason Carr has a family commitment that he couldn't get out of, and he may be able to join us later. And Doug Talbot is ill. And so we will be 2 people short that I'm aware of. I see that Jeremiah has joined us. So I think we're still a few short, but hopefully they will get here in a few minutes. So, welcome to this meeting. I think it's actually I don't know where we are, but we've got 3 more, I think. So I hope I'm right about that. We're going to need them. But at any rate, this meeting tonight was designed to, continue to get to know each other, but most importantly, start drafting some principles for how you can evaluate the recommendations you're coming up with. It's sort of making sure that you're thinking through what the recommendations need to accomplish for them to be worthy of going forward. And we're finally going to get to the point where you get to draft some recommendations for potential adoption by the working group as a whole. So that's what the primary purpose of the meeting tonight is, of those two purposes. Just a quick reminder about your ground rules. Participate with intention, which means talk about what we're supposed to be talking about tonight. Pay attention to what's on the agenda. Try to make your contributions when you can. Don't go away wishing that you'd said something. Appreciate the diversity of perspectives because you were designed to include a diversity of perspectives. And so for the group to take the most advantage of that diversity of perspectives, we really need to make sure everybody feels that they have a chance to be heard. And then third, we want to maintain a respectful space. So I just wanted to save as much time for you all tonight. So that's just a quick review of what we're doing tonight. Any questions from any of the working group members? Okay. So wanted to have an opportunity for everybody to enter the room. So I'm going to be going through the list of names and give you a chance to speak. Just any opening thoughts that you would contribute at this meeting tonight. Just as a heads up, I'll be going by alphabetical order by your last name because that's the way it's presented on my list in front of me. So give you a little heads up when it's almost your turn. So Derek, that means you're up first.
Okay, one sentence introduction, I guess. Looking forward to the end result.
Okay. Matt Borg. Matt, you
Derek
there?
said it pretty good,
Oh, there-
looking forward to those recommendations and kind of the end result or whatever. So,
Okay, great. Jason Carr who is not able to be here from a family commitment. Jeff how do you say your last name? Chowles?
Jeff Choles.
Choles, okay.
Long O.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm excited that we're at this point. A little apprehensive about coming up with these recommendations. I think as we left the last meeting, there's some items that have risen to the surface that I think that we'll focus on. So that'll help us to I guess, narrow the list a little bit. But I'm looking forward to recommendations and adding the detail.
thank you for that. Ken Crane? Hey, there, Ken. I'll come back to Ken. Tim Frost?
Yeah, thanks. I think for me, I'm thankful that there's this many sportsmen and sportswomen that deeply care about our future. That's been really nice to see throughout this process.
Thank you. Nathan Guy?
Yeah, just what Derek said, looking forward to the end result and seeing what we kind of semi come up with tonight.
Okay, thank you, Nathan. Is Dylan on? I don't think I've seen him.
Yes, I'm on.
Oh, there you are. Okay. When you guys are black boxes, it's hard to see you. Go ahead.
Same thing. Just looking forward to seeing what we come up with here.
Hey, Larry Hatter.
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can. Thank you.
All right, good deal. No, just looking forward to seeing some progress here. It's time to put the rubber to the street.
Okay. Don't see Hallie yet.
I'm here.
Oh, you are. Oh, there you are. Good, go for it.
Yeah, I'll just echo what everyone's saying, that happy to be here, continuing to learn from everyone. I've appreciated all the online comments. I've looked at everyone, and you know, there's a wide range of opinions, but I'm grateful that people are participating. So
Thank you. Kim Johnson? Oh, Kim, you're muted. Bottom left-hand corner.
Okay, there we go. I was saying the hardest part is just coming up now. I think our work's cut out for us in these next few meetings, but I'm looking forward to it and wishing us all the best in moving forward through this, because we've done a lot of pre-work, and now the hard work is up for us.
Thank you. I hope it's not that hard, but we'll we'll see. It's hard to say right now. Okay, Jeremiah Manny.
Hello. Yeah, I'm looking forward to finding ways to protect Idaho's hunting lifestyle. We've received a lot of information that now we have to put to the road. So that's what I'm looking forward to now.
Thank you. Okay, Alex Martin.
I'm just kind of like everybody else here. I feel like we're finally feeling a little bit of direction happening. We're starting to kind of get ourselves pointed where we need to be going. So looking forward to working with everybody. Seems like we're all working pretty well together so far.
Good. Hope that continues. Chelsea Merriman.
I guess opening thoughts for this meeting is that, yeah, it is time to roll up our sleeves. I kind of agree with Kim. The hardest part's about to hit us. So it's going to be an adventure. And I think today and the next 2 to 3 meetings are going to be a lot of work. I'm looking forward to that.
Hey, Bryce Oldemeyer.
Yeah, just kind of echoing what everyone's kind of said already, but just looking forward to get pen to paper and putting some thoughts down and starting to draft some recommendations.
Has Kevin Rogers joined us? Tal Sampson. There you are.
Sorry. Hey, yeah, good to see everybody. Looking forward to talking and seeing if we can get some work done. And you know, it's nice to get to this point to where we can start talking about things. So I'm looking forward to it. Thanks.
You all sound like you belong to the same group. This is fun. Okay, Jeff Shin.
All right, I will try. I've been having terrible connectivity issues, so hopefully you're hearing me. But yeah, I'm just looking forward to refining our thinking and getting down to the meat of this. So I'm looking forward to working with everybody to get a little more clarity on what our issues are.
Thank you. Nicole Swafford. There you are.
Same as the rest. I'm looking forward to digging in tonight.
Rob Thornberry.
I'm eager to get started.
Okay. Jason Topp.
Yeah, I'm eager to get this stuff done and moving forward and using the data that was provided for us and represent the public the best we can on what they're wanting as well.
Okay, and Dustin Webster.
I don't know, I guess probably mostly looking forward to the semantical ballet that's going to be taking place over the next couple of meetings. It'll be interesting if we can actually get together and get a couple recommendations at least spider graphed out. I'll be interested to see the end result there.
Yeah. Why did you call it semantical ballet?
Yes, ma'am, a semantical ballet.
Oh my
There's
gosh.
going to be a lot of wordsmithing done.
Thank you for that. I haven't heard that before. Ken Crane, you were absent when I went around the room. Are you back? There you are. Did you have any opening remarks, Ken? We can't hear you. And then has Kevin Rogers shown up? Guess not. Okay, try again, Ken. Oh, no microphone. As a suggestion, you could try calling in and using your phone for audio, and we can still see you. If you want to give that a try. Okay, great. Well, thanks everybody. It sounds like you're anxious to get started, so I won't dally here. We have a ballet to move to begin, so. I wanted to, since Ellery could not be here tonight, I want to do a quick review. You should have received this in the email, but of the working groups, the feedback that you've gotten from the public feedback forms. So far, there's been 228 comments that have come in. That's as of the 14th of January. 220 of those comments were from Idaho residents and then a handful from other states. And it's the same as usual. They have put everything that comes from the same individual into a single comment for the content analysis. And anything that's blank is left out. There was a form letter that was sent by 8 people, but it was counted 8 times. So that's how she approaches it. She wanted me to remind you that it's not the same thing as a scientific sample of the public. It is, folks that are following what you're doing and submitting their thoughts that way. So, and here is a depiction of what they are generally saying. With the blue bar is supporting and the orange bar is opposed, with the green bar. Of course, my computer wants to restart right now. I'm going to say no. And then the green is support with caveats. So you can see that thermal and what's IR? At any rate, is
infrared.
Infrared has the most opposition, followed by long range shooting and drones. In terms of support is general tech, followed by optics and rangefinders, followed by trail cameras. One of the things that I was noticing when I was looking at this is the categories are not exactly the same as the 17 categories that you ranked last time through. So it's a little interesting to look at this and try to figure out how it fits with how you ranked things last time. So unfortunately, I am not the right person to ask any questions about this data. That would be Ellery. Does anybody have anything they want to share, having looked at the spreadsheet and her summary? We're all good?
Wendy, I think she got, if I'm correct me if I'm mistaken, I think the things we ranked were on the ones that they sent out to the 15,000 people.
That's exactly correct. Yeah, I think this compilation of comments is just what's come in the door, and that they didn't necessarily use those same categories is what I guess I'm trying to say. Jeremiah?
Yes, ma'am. Is this to support restrictions or in that sense? I just want to make sure I see it. Or are they saying oppose restrictions for certain things? Can you clarify that?
I'm not positive I can. Greg Wooten is on. Do you have an answer for that, Greg?
Oh, sorry, Greg, go ahead.
No, that's fine. Go right
Yeah,
ahead.
Ellery addressed this last time, and for instance, for drones, it was opposed using drones. So they were in support of heavier restrictions on drones, if that makes sense.
It represents the number of that kind of comment. So there was just under 60 negative comments about thermal IR, just under 50 negative comments about drones. Whereas like long range shooting would have had 22 public or support ones. It's not necessarily the amount of support ranked, it's how many times that technology was
That's
mentioned
correct. That's correct.
through the public forum.
She's just wanting you to be aware of sort of what is coming in through the website. So, okay. Well, then let's move on. Oh, here's just a compilation of some other comments that are off scope from your work. She wants you to know what's coming in. I was kind of interested in that they want to see more transparency in what you all are doing. And maybe they are not aware that you are only allowed to meet when you're together. So it's not like there's any secret meetings going on anywhere. But at any rate, if you have any questions about the summary or the spreadsheet, please feel free to send those to Ellery because she's a lot more familiar with the data than I am. Okay, so we're moving into the first meat of this meeting tonight, and that is I wanted you to have a way to evaluate and compare your draft recommendations to each other. So I went back through things that people have said every time you've had a chance to speak, and I identified what I think are some principles that are commonly held. I won't say we haven't reached consensus on these by any means, but there are things that have been said in meetings that I hear as things that matter to you. So one is that you would like to minimize negative impacts on the principles that underlie that fair chase ethic that we talked about at the second meeting. So you want to make sure that nothing that you do results in not nothing that you do, but that you're mindful of impacts that you might have on the fair chase ethic and how that applies in the state of Idaho. And a second one is you want to avoid negatively impacting the Idaho hunting heritage and the opportunity that Idaho hunters have for hunting. So to the extent possible, that's another thing to try to avoid having happen as a result of your recommendations. A third is this idea that you want to make sure that the recommendations that you make are perceived as being reasonable, that you don't recommend something that's completely unreasonable. This would be an example of one that, wow, what a subjective words to be working with. So really kind of trying to figure out what reasonable means to you all as a group and how you'll evaluate the recommendations to decide whether you think they're reasonable or not. A fourth is a need for Idaho Fish and Game to have an ongoing ability to address future advancements in technology. So not just dealing with what's already happened in terms of advancements in technology, but having that capacity to stay on top of things as they develop, because you don't necessarily know what's going to happen next. And then the fifth principle is to support the perception that the working group represents Idaho hunting. You want to make sure that there are not hunters that think that you're some elitist club of individuals that all think alike, but that you really are putting the effort into making sure that you represent the whole diversity of people that care about hunting in Idaho. So these are 5 what I would call draft principles. And we're going to go into small groups. Connor is going to put you into small groups. And this is my proposed organization of how those small groups would be configured. So the Fair Chase Ethic Group will have Bryce Oldemeyer, Dylan Halverson, Kim Johnson, and Nathan Guy. The Hunting Opportunity and Idaho Hunting Heritage Group will have Derek Atterbury, Hallie Hemingway, Jeff Choles, I tried to write it down, Choles, Jeremiah Manny, and Ken Crane. The perception that the recommendations are reasonable would be Alex Martin, Chelsea Merriman, Doug Talbot, Nicole Swafford, and Rob Thornberry. The ongoing need to address technology advancements. We're going to have Dustin Webster, Jason Carr, Kevin Rogers, Tal Sampson, and Tim Frost tackling that topic. And then the last one for helping to make sure that there's a perception that the working group actually represents all Idaho hunters. And that would be Jason Top, Jeff Shin, Larry Hatter, and Matt Borg. So what we're going to do is you are going to receive an invitation from Connor to join a breakout room. And your assignment is to talk about that principle and how you might define it. So what does it mean, that principle? But then move on to consider how you would use it to evaluate the draft recommendations that the working group is going to consider making. So how would you apply this principle? When is it good and when is it bad when you're looking at a draft recommendation? So trying to really make transparent for you how you're doing this evaluation of the draft recommendations that you might consider. So I want you to develop a draft statement of how you would propose the working group could apply the principle once recommendations have been drafted. You'll need to be prepared to share your results when you come back to the full working group. And I will need someone in the group to draft the statement up and send it to me so that we can share it with you all later. So does the assignment make sense? This is a good time to ask questions if it doesn't.
So we have our group, what the title of that group is, so each individual thing that we're going to discuss, and then we have to put together a summary of that and what our opinion is on that. So like in my case, this is Dylan, Fair Chase Ethic, and then we have to put together a summary of that, of what our opinion of our group is for that Fair Chase Ethic. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Is that
I'm writing it in such a way that you can use that to consider all of the draft recommendations that you might come up with as a group. So let's just say that after all this is said and done, you have 10 recommendations that you're thinking about. How would you decide which to advance forward? So this is an attempt to see if these principles will help you decide whether they're good recommendations or not. I will say that I don't believe any recommendations will come out looking great on all of these. So ultimately, it'll be a final package that you'll be evaluating, that these might hurt Fair Chase, but these might benefit Fair Chase, if that makes sense. Yes, Ken.
Just checking to see if my mic is working.
Ha, we can hear you.
All right, good. Now my camera's not, so.
Okay, we get one or the other, huh?
Yeah.
So when you land in your small groups, if it's possible for you to have your cameras on, it'll go better because you will understand each other better if you can see each other speak. So Connor will now put you in your small groups. Is there anything? I guess we're good. Okay, so when it's time to come back, we'll see you then. So that the public can observe how you're working. So
looks like you put me into the wrong group. I'm supposed to be in the Fair Chase group.
who's speaking?
Nathan, Guy.
Oh, Okay, oh, okay. Well, unless he's bringing you back. Is that the group you
Yeah.
bring? Okay, so
Hey,
hang,
Nathan. Yeah, group one, Fair Chase, with Bryce and Dylan,
Okay.
should be in the main main
Perfect.
session. I'm moving Bryce and Dylan back in there right now.
Cool.
Yep.
sorry, we just got our signals crossed.
No worries. We already had so much accomplished.
Oh, boy, I'm glad to hear that.
And then Kim needs to go. I don't have the list in front of me, Wendy, but is Kim Johnson is she in group one?
Okay, so is it the Fair Chase group should be Bryce Oldemeyer, Dylan
Okay.
Halverson, Kim Johnson, and Nathan Guy.
Yeah, just four of us.
Okay.
Okay.
Kim Johnson just texted me asking if
Yeah,
I could move her back in.
yeah,
Is she in here?
yeah, she's here
Not
now.
yet.
Sorry for that, you guys. We have to keep one group in the main room so that the public can observe you talking. So sorry to create all that confusion.
Oh, you're fine.
So you're all here.
I don't know what I missed.
You didn't miss much. The timing was really bad because I sent a message and then it went to the whole group. I was like, oh God, I didn't want to do that. And then like deleted it. And then I thought we somehow screwed up the meeting.
No. We're all just people here. It's okay.
So Bryce, you can probably just take it back where you started there.
Yeah, so I guess do you know, I guess this is a good question for Wendy and Connor. Can I send messages just to our group or does it go to everybody?
It'll be going to everybody now, Bryce.
Gotcha. All right. Well,
Yeah.
then maybe I'll just screen share. But yeah, I guess going back through the whole process of trying to find some foundation to justify our recommendations to the commission, it really comes back to like, okay, how can we set up some objective sidewalls of what that looks like? And I went through the process of like defining fair chase or how I'd go about thinking on it. And really like the Boone and Crockett Club's definition from the meeting 2 or 3 meetings ago. But there's a couple parts of it, and I'll just read it really quick where it says, fair chase is the ethical, sportsmanlike, and lawful pursuit of taking of any free-ranging wild game animal in a manner that does not give the hunter an improper or unfair advantage over the game animal, which sounds great. But the two things that are really squishy in that definition is improper and unfair advantage, right? Like that's a thing that we've been discussing for forever. So those are the two things that I would say if we were going to go down this route of like trying to define fair chase, that's a good starting spot, but we would need to come up with some type of clarification or some more thoughts on what improper should mean or how we want to interpret that, as well as unfair advantage. Does that make sense to folks, or like?
Yeah, it's a good. Oh, go ahead, Kim.
So you're saying unfair advantage is probably one thing we've got to come up with a definition that we can work with.
That's the subjective part, right?
Yeah. And I think there's two things that, well, improper and then unfair advantage. I think those are two slightly different things. The improper one, and again, I haven't finished my notes, and like I thought about this quite a bit after our last meeting, and then I haven't picked it up. So the improper part, I don't have really any like a good, I don't know, draft or idea of what that could look like. But for unfair advantage, there's a lot of talk the last couple meetings of like, how do we define that? And a lot of it circled around like, if you are able to harvest an animal and like don't engage any of its senses because you're too far, you're using technology that essentially provides you to get information on animals without actually having to have boots on the ground or hiking up hills or whatever it is. So essentially, they can't smell, see, or hear you. And again, that's not perfect because that doesn't cover every technology or what that could be. But I think that would be a good starting spot, at least for like what could be an unfair advantage is, yes, the animal doesn't even perceive you're a threat or in like the area. That I feel like is a good starting point of like how to define that, at least unfair advantage.
I have to kind of somewhat agree and then also disagree with Nephi Cole, who was one of our second meeting speakers. And the fair chase and the ethics of that is it's everybody's own adventure, right? I mean, if that thing, we should be going back and throwing rocks at these animals. But, you know, long range shooting in our group last thing wasn't even in the top 10 categories. So by your definition, we got to, I think, walk that fine line because we're talking about drones, thermal, infrared, night vision. But you say an unfair advantage, 800 yards. Well, I mean, deer probably can't see you, but the elk can definitely see you on skyline. But that's not something I want to feel like we're going to touch on at all.
100% agree. And I don't think that kind of sensory recognition type criteria will be a blanket coverage for everything, right? You're spot on. Like I'm in total agreement, like long range shooting, that's more of a education. It's a kind of the hunter's journey or whatever we called it back then. That likely doesn't fit squarely into kind of an unfair advantage category as defined by kind of the animal sensory criteria, if we want to say that. But
it's a skill.
Yeah, I like that, the skill.
It's a skill. You either have it or you don't. Whereas to use the other end of the spectrum, thermals, there is no skill. Just using two examples.
That's a good way to put it on the skill versus not.
Skill versus AI tech almost, you know.
Right.
So the tech is doing the work. Your eyeball is just looking through
not the skill. Right.
Yeah.
You're just inferring what the technology is providing to you. Whereas the long range is just using those two examples. There's other examples we could use, but the long range is an actual skill that you've built up over time with your weapon, your ability, but then also the shooter themselves, which is
okay.
the part of hunting.
Can I just ask a question about that? Because that's one thing I've been struggling with a little bit, talking to different people and everything. So like, let's say it's a 1200 yard, really long shot. And I know it's all skill and that I think that's all cool. But if it's really far away, then the animal can't hear you, smell you, or maybe see you when you're that far away. So is it fair?
Kim, I'll jump in that one real quick. I mean, we
okay, thanks.
I mean, you know, I've shot animals at 5 yards and past 1,000 yards, but it's one of those things where most people can't make that shot without quite a bit of skill with just wind and all that.
Okay.
But, and I'll touch it with a 10,000 scope there. I mean, you got a guy, our job is to swiftly kill the animal with as minimal pain to him as possible, right? And we'll take somebody like me that shoots over 50,000 rounds a year, right? I'm probably more deadly at 900 yards than the guy that shoots 5 rounds a year at 100 yards, that hits it in the butt, the animal runs off for 8 miles, takes 3 days to bleed out and die. So, like you said, that's a skill to be able to hit those animals at that longer range. Now, is there a small crowd that's just going to lob rounds downrange? Yeah. Same guys will lob rounds at 100 yards are going to lob rounds at 800 yards, you know, so the internet makes it look real easy to shoot 1,200 yards on an animal, but it's definitely a skill to do that.
Oh, I understand all that part of it. I know how, and I like that and everything. I'm just saying, when you go to the fair chase thing, whether the animal even has any sense that you're in the area. I don't know. Going just from that aspect.
No, for sure. And there, to play a little bit of devil's advocate here, there's other things that you can do that are at close range to defeat an animal's sight and hearing and smell too. So like
ground blinds for archery.
Yeah, tree stands, elevated locations. So I mean, you could be on top of and I think of these examples because they exist where I hunt, a cliff that overlooks a river bottom, and the shots are 100 yards, but the animal, you're in a completely different wind stream. They can't see you. You're on top of a cliff. That there's just aspects of topography that you can use to one's advantage as well that also help mitigate those, sight, smell.
Okay, right. So it doesn't apply.
Yeah, so there's different examples of ways that you can and to, in a way, like that's just good craftsmanship on the hunters. This is my opinion, but good craftsmanship on the hunter's standpoint to be able to defeat those things. But those are skill-based. Again, those are skill-based, or something is utilized by the hunter in a skill fashion. So finding a location or using, topography or the noise of a river to cover their, that's them. Whereas using technology to do all the work for you, and then you're just inferring it as you're seeing it. I guess, does that make sense? The two different.
Yeah, no, that was a good explanation. And boy, I think we've really hit on something on this skill-based versus the technology.
So I will, two things. I think we'll have to eventually circle back to like the fair chase definition, but I would argue that having if we think of rifle scopes and modern rifle cartridges, long range shooting is a new technology, say 30 years ago, new technology hit the market, and use that justification of like, you had to be skillful and understand the ballistics, how to dial out, how to shoot long ranges. What is the same argument could be said about using thermal optics. Like, it still takes some skill to learn how to effectively use thermal optics. And now that same argument could be made for like, yeah, it's not that easy to use thermal optics, and it's just a technology that'll make us kill things more efficiently and harvest more efficiently. That I think is kind of a slippery slope to like some things like where skill stops and technology starts or gives too much of an advantage. And I'm not saying I'm advocating for thermal scopes. I'm just saying we have to come up with some type of broad generalization of like, how do we want to define fair chase or what's ethical? And I would say trying to define it as skill is still subjective. Like it takes skill to do pretty much everything. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah, in a way.
I
know.
I get your point. I think you're oversimplifying the thermal thing or overcomplicating the thermal thing a little bit. But yes, I get your point. And I think the reason why Boone and Crockett and Pope and Young and nobody has put down a fair chase and ethics definition that's solid and not subjective is because there isn't one. So we can only do what we can do. And in some states, you can do things that, here you can't. So some of it's, like there is no, I've heard one person say there is no morals in hunting, because you can say, well, doing X is not more, it's not moral, but then you go somewhere else and it totally is.
Yeah.
So it boils down to our subjective, what we're going to put our spin on it. And so if we have to put a spin on it somewhere, I think the skills thing dials in between some, I think all of us are on the same page on what we meant by skill, I think, but.
So I think a good place to settle then is we don't even need to change or define what improper or unfair advantage is. We could have a similar, like, kind of vague definition of fair chase, because there isn't going to be necessarily a cookie cutter way to do that that fits every technology we're going to discuss. But then when we get to the technology and going through, line items are coming up with justifications. If it can plausibly fall under what's improper or unfair advantage, and it's typically going to have some blatant component of what most folks or everyone in the work group agrees upon, that yes, it is outside of the scope of improper or an unfair advantage, then we can use that as the
Come on, baseline.
a foundation, right? So we don't have to necessarily define those and intentionally keep it vague. And
you have to tackle it case by case.
Yeah, I think that's what it'd come down to.
Yeah, I think the quote, to quote you, I think your best part of the whole deal was just to say that we just copy what Boone and Crockett's fair chase and ethic is, their definition, and then we have to make a case by case decision as a group. I honestly, I did the same thing you did. I wrote down their definition, and I've thought about this since we did that. They did that presentation. And the reason why they've come up with what they've come up with is because the more I can think about this, and the more examples I've thought of all around the world of what morals and ethics of hunting are, it boils down to the people that are tasked with coming up with what is ethical and what is okay, because it's impossible to be able to write down a definition on a piece of paper, and I've been trying.
I wrote down, I just took out the unfair part. So I've been writing down the ethical, sportsmanlike, and legal pursuit of harvesting of any free-ranging wild game animal in a way that does not provide the hunter with an improper advantage over the animal. I just took out the unfair part because just an improper advantage. And that way it kind of dumbs it down a little more. And then they take, because the unfair is an emotional thing. Well, that's not fair. So if we just do, with an improper advantage, it's kind of, it takes the emotion out of it.
Yeah.
This is my thought.
Oh, I like it. It's more simplistic.
Yeah.
It leaves less rabbit holes to go down, which is probably better.
I mean, I feel like we can go down the same rabbit holes with improper, but it seems somewhat redundant.
Yeah, so you just kind of, instead of improper and unfair, it's just kind of improper advantage.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, that's like any legislator. If it's a good bill in one state, they plagiarize it and change it for their state. I mean, it's kind of a tried and true statement,
Yeah, no, I like it.
Yeah, that works for me.
Yeah, and like you said, you can apply it to each thing that we then talk about. Does it do this? Does this item that we're talking about do this?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm with you though, Bryce. I'm just rolling with this. And then Nathan, I think that's a good idea to simplify it even more. Just why reinvent the wheel?
Right, exactly. But Wendy, do you have anything to say on that?
Well, as long as you can report it to the rest of the group, I think that's the important thing is being able to share.
Well, I think
Right.
Nathan,
you want me to do that?
Yeah, did you write it down?
Yeah, I have it written down.
Okay. If you've got it written down, then I think basically that definition and that it's up to us to pick the individual aspects of what they are. It's
got it.
We can fight over the details on each individual case by case technology, but otherwise this is the overall definition of what it needs to fit.
And I like how I said that, case by case,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be great to have an objective definition that solved all of our problems, but if that was the case, we probably wouldn't have this group here today. So
exactly, somebody else would have done it by now.
Yeah, because it would be a lot more easy. So
perfect. Kim, anything you have to add?
No, I like that. I think that's
We're
good. I like it. So, and then yeah, just as we go through all the technologies, we'll just push it back to that. So
perfect.
Yeah.
And Wendy, just to jump into you, is that kind of what you wanted each of these groups to kind of focus on?
Yeah. there's, 5 different principles, but the question is, how can you tell from looking at your recommendations whether they're worthy of your support, I guess.
I think it fits what we did.
Yeah. You're done a little bit early because we're gonna call everybody else back at 7. So
Perfect.
I feel sorry for the people doing reasonable.
Hey, Dylan,
Yeah.
a buddy of yours has been calling me nonstop on all of this, Aaron Babin.
Yeah, me and you both.
Oh, has he been? Yeah. I said, yeah, I like Dylan. He's in our group, my groups. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
I've been getting an earful. So,
Yeah.
but I really like that kid. So,
Oh yeah, he's got, do you know him outside of this at all? Or?
Forest Service.
Yeah. I wondered if you did because I knew you worked up that way.
I mean, when he was a
does too.
seasonal, I
Yeah.
I knew him. He was my first pet sitter.
Oh, okay.
I said, do you guys have any guys over there in the fire shop that would want to pet sit for me? And Aaron was the first one. He's a good kid.
Oh yeah, for sure. I went to college with him. So
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what he said.
Yeah, he's a good dude. For sure. So Wendy, since we have a little bit of time and it's a little bit smaller group, I guess. We got an email the other day about somebody from the group that went around the group and went to the I don't remember that went to the director. And I
He came in late. He came in late before.
The director talked about that already.
Oh,
Did you-
okay. I did come in. I was having some technical issues, so I must have missed that.
Yeah, the director came in and just asked
sorry.
everyone to focus the conversation for now among the working group members as well as your other connections, and to avoid giving the impression of trying to influence the commission for now, because they'll be taking your recommendations into consideration later.
Okay.
So.
Wasn't me.
Yeah, and I don't care who it was. I was just curious since it was.
He said it really wasn't as bad as what it might have made out to sound like. It was fairly innocent, is how he put it, but we shouldn't be doing that either.
Yeah. Okay. I kind of wondered if it was just somebody reaching out and wanting to discuss something.
I think it was in our charter that we first signed the first meeting, and it probably got forgotten.
Yeah. Okay. I apologize about that. I missed that. So.
We're recording so you can watch it.
Yeah,
the recording's ready. Yeah.
That's true. A few
Instead
days
of
from
me trying to interpret it, then you can hear it from him.
And I forget, Dylan, Kim, Bryce, where are you guys from again?
St. Mary's.
St. Mary's.
Kellogg.
Dallas.
Got it. Okay.
Oh, Chalice. Okay, right.
It's a good cross section of the state right here.
Yeah.
And Nathan, where are you from again?
Nampa, right here in the Treasure Valley.
Okay.
Yeah. We got the whole state here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got a good spread.
We'll be rejoined in just 3 minutes here by everyone else.
So after we do this little job, then what's the next step?
We're going to tackle 3 of the
tackle 3 of the technologies.
Technology tonight.
Okay.
Yeah, but in small groups also. So
The same groups here or different groups?
it's reconfigured.
Got it.
But
based
then
on
we'll be able to see what everybody put down for their principles or their basic tenets for.
the first thing we'll do is get a report from each of the groups about their principles, what they came up with. Hopefully everybody was able to have a meeting of the minds.
That's a daunting task.
Now, is one of the groups being broadcast I didn't
You
hear this.
are.
We are.
We are, yeah.
I got the impression when you explained the little mishap with.
Yeah. Yeah, we're supposed to keep one group here, but Connor and I had a little disconnect. So I'm like, you gotta bring one of them back.
So Kim, we've had your picture's been the whole thing the whole time. They don't see any of us. They just see you.
Me?
No, just
Oh
Kim.
Oh, just Kim. He's pulling your leg.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Oh. Are they coming back?
I'm gonna go to
Yeah, there's a 30-second warning, so folks will
Okay.
start trickling back in.
Thank you, Connor.
Yeah, no problem. It'll be a lot smoother round 2, I promise.
Did you get the email finally?
Yeah,
Oh,
it helps.
good.
It helps immensely.
Good. I was hoping so. Here everyone comes. Welcome back, everyone.
Welcome back.
Okay. Fair Chase was in the public facing room, so I'm going to let them go first, but then we'll hear from each group and just share what you came up with as a draft of the principle and how you would use it to evaluate or recommendations related to technology. So, Fair Chase?
Yep. So Nate Guy here. We had Bryce, Kim, and Dylan was in our group. And we talked about, so we had a fair chase and we kind of went back and talked about the Boone and Crockett and Pope and Young and kind of took their statement. It's kind of a tried and true statement. We changed a little bit, but then we can apply it to each technology that we talk about and apply it case by case. We took out some of their wording and we came up with the ethical, sportsmanlike, and legal pursuit and harvesting of any free-ranging wild game animal in a way that does not provide the hunter with an improper advantage over the animal. We took out the unfair part of it because that's more of an emotional state of it. But we feel that we can take that and kind of apply it to each technology. And it just kind of gives a little baseline. That's what we got.
So, just a clarification. It's not necessarily an evaluation of the technology, but of the recommendations that you come up with, right?
That's what we meant, yeah.
Okay. And so Nathan, you can send that to me?
Yes, I don't know how to do it. I can email it to you.
No, you don't have to do it now or here.
Okay, perfect.
But,
I'll get it to you.
yeah, okay, perfect. Does anybody have any questions for the Fair Chase group?
Can you say it one more time?
Yeah. The ethical, sportsmanlike, and legal pursuit and harvesting of any free-ranging wild game animal in a way that does not provide the hunter with an improper advantage over the animal.
Charles, it looked like you had something to say. No?
Did you say Tal?
Yeah, it looked like you turned your microphone on. Maybe I just
Turn it on?
maybe
No, I
not.
didn't have that. That sounded good to me.
Okay, all right. Any questions then for Nathan and that group? Okay. Next up is the Hunting Opportunity Idaho Hunting Heritage Group.
That's us. Can I just share my screen with our questions?
Sure.
Okay. Can you see that?
Yes.
So we came up with 3 questions. Will this recommendation maintain current or improve future hunting opportunity? Does this recommendation allow hunters the freedom to choose their own journey? Does this recommendation maintain our opportunity and preserve our heritage and traditions into the future for our family and friends?
Nice.
Wow. Thank you very much. Any questions for that group? Who else? You were with Derek, Jeff,
Jeremiah,
and Ken?
Yep.
Okay.
I think that's a great job.
Thank you. Okay, perception that the recommendations are reasonable. Who's reporting for you all?
So can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent. We drafted that we at the IDFG Hat Working Group feel whichever recommendations we put forward to the commission are reasonable in their attempts to utilize sound science, reason, citizen input, and traditional hunter values to make recommendations that perpetuate the future of the hunting both now and for future generations throughout the continued growth of populations and improvement of technology.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you. You've all taken different approaches to this. It's going to be really interesting when we start piloting our ability to evaluate the recommendations. Any question for Chelsea or the rest of her group? Matt, do you have a hand up? Oh no, it's just my hand floating around. Sorry. Okay. The ongoing need to address technology advancements group.
So we came up with kind of like three, I'll call it questions that we might apply a principle. So first is, does the technology significantly diminish an animal's ability to rely on natural instincts, defenses, and survival strategies? Another question to kind of just consider with new technology is, does the technology lead to unsustainable harvest rates that jeopardize the health and viability of big game wildlife populations? And the last one, which we probably still need to wordsmith, is does the technology create scientific evidence-based potential harm of utilizing that technology? So I think the approach, we could not come to like, here is a tried and true principle that's going to work for every single technology as technology advances on, recognizing there's a pacing problem. But we did try to come up with some questions that like you can reasonably ask related to every piece of technology, that sometimes the answer is yes, sometimes the answer is no. And just because you answer it as such doesn't mean that means you regulate it, but it at least forces us through a similar thought process and consideration and trying to apply it as a principle.
Does everybody understand what they did?
Tim, those were awesome. Could you repeat the first one?
The first one was, does the technology significantly diminish an animal's ability to rely on its natural instincts, defenses, and survival strategies? I think the thing we struggled with in our conversation was simply everything that man has come up with since spear and stick and bow is an advantage and is probably arguably technology in nature. And so we're just trying to create a vetting scenario, a list of potential questions that might vet something.
Good.
Liked it.
Ken, did you have something? No.
I was just complimenting him.
Oh, okay. Okay, the little yellow boxes around your faces is how I think. Anyway, okay, the last one, the perception that the working group represents all Idaho hunters.
So our group came up with, the working group is looking at all the data from the statewide survey, the public comments, and from the HAT group members to show an unbiased opinion and consensus from the entire state to maximize opportunities across the state.
And so that's how you'll test whether the recommendations are worthy of going forward.
Yep, using all the information we received from
from
the survey, public comments, and the group members.
Okay. Any questions from anybody about these 5 principles? Does it occur to you that anything is missing in terms of a principle that you need to look at to evaluate your draft recommendations? Well, looking ahead.
Wendy,
Yeah, Rob, go ahead.
the only word that I heard in that I wondered about was diminish. I think it was in the last group. Technology that diminishes wildlife's ability. I don't know if diminishes is the right word. I wonder if overcomes or sidelines or something a little more direct.
Negates.
I think
I like that.
I think negates implies a binary of like they either have it or they don't. I think diminish or reduces or something like that brings a
What about the
sliding
word?
scale.
What about the word overpowers?
So preview of coming attractions. After the break, you're going to tackle 3 technologies, the 3 technologies that you decided were most important for you to tackle. And between now and the next meeting, you're going to have a homework assignment that asks you to evaluate the 3 draft recommendations using the principles that you just talked about. It'll be a pilot test, and we'll find out whether the principles and the way you stated them are working for you, right? So
Yeah.
we may have to refine them at the next meeting, and that's okay. But fundamentally, the question is, how are you going to know whether a recommendation is a good recommendation or not? And so what this exercise is to try to get you to think about the things that you've said are important to you. So it's okay if they're not perfect yet, because we're not done yet, but it'll give us a practice run after this meeting. Does that make sense for everybody?
Yeah.
Okay. We are a little bit ahead of schedule, but we're going to go ahead and take our break now. So we'll come back in 10 minutes, I guess 21 minutes after the hour, depending on what part of the state you're in, whether you're on Pacific or Mountain Time. So see you in 10 minutes for the next task we're going to accomplish tonight. So you will be pleased to know that you get to start working tonight on draft recommendations. We're going to take the 3 top ranked from the 17, the ranking that we did last meeting of the 17 technologies. And this, you were ranking them on how important you thought it was for the working group to tackle them. So that was the assignment that I gave you. So come on, slides, work with me here. Here are the results of that ranking exercise. The top 3 included thermal imaging optics, drones, and modern night vision / thermal rifle scopes. So those are the 3 we're going to tackle this evening. Try to develop draft recommendations for addressing those technologies. I'm going to go through each of them sort of slowly, so we are all starting on the same page. You're going to go have 50 minutes to do this work. Please accept the invitation to join a breakout room. We will keep one group of people here in this main room so that the public can watch you work. So the task is to discuss the technology that you've been assigned, consider the current legal situation under Idaho law, and then start drafting what you would want to say as a working group about that technology. And so what you might recommend for consideration by the rest of the working group. For thermal imaging optics, by the way, I just want to back up and say, I looked at how each of you ranked these 3. And so everybody is in the group that you ranked the highest of these 3 tonight. So whatever it was according to your rankings, and that's how I made the small group assignments. So the way thermal imaging optics was defined in the survey that went out to the Idaho hunters and in the exercise that you participated in was optics that allow an individual to scan an area and single out living warm objects in dense cover that would otherwise not be seen by the human eye. So this technology was ranked #1 by the working group as being important for you to address, and it's opposed by 78% of Idaho hunters in the statewide survey. The current legal situation is it's unlawful when it's attached to or incorporated into a firearm, although handheld thermal optics are allowed. So we're going to start with 2 small groups on this technology. One group will have Chelsea, Derek, Doug, Talbot, Dustin Webster, and Tim Frost. And the other group, Doug Talbot is not here, but at any rate, he would be in that group if he was here. Hang on 1 second, Ken, and I'll get to you. And then the second group will be Jason Carr, Jeff Shin, Kimberly Johnson, Matt Borg, and Rob Thornberry. So what we're going to have you do is work in 2 small groups for 25 minutes, and then we're going to put you all together. So the reason that we're putting you in small groups is so you have as much time as possible to talk to each other, and then we'll put you in a big group together. Yes, Ken.
So a question for clarification on, excuse me, on the optics for thermal and night vision. Are we considering them the same? Or are they being addressed?
Night vision is defined this way.
Okay.
Modern night vision thermal rifle scopes. So does that help clarify the difference?
Well, maybe. I think at the end it'll wash out at the end, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you're in one of these 2 groups, please take a good hard look at how it's defined and how it's currently what the current regulations are. And the question is, do you like those regulations? Do you want to change them? Do you want to do away with them? How would you change them, etc.? So what do you think about this current legal situation, and what would you as a working group recommend with regard to this? So again, it was ranked #1 by you as a working group as one you should tackle. Okay, so the next one is drones. And specifically, this is drones while they're used for hunting or scouting. It was ranked #2 by the working group, and drones are opposed by 91% of the hunters based on the results of the statewide survey. So the current situation is it's unlawful to molest, stir up, rally, or drive in any manner any game animal or game bird. It's unlawful to locate for the purpose of hunting during the same calendar day. It's unlawful to spot or locate and communicate the location in any way to persons on the ground. However, drones are legal for recovery. So that's the current legal situation. Again, we're going to have 2 small groups, one with Alex Martin, Dylan Halverson, Jason Top, Jeff Chowell, I'll never say it right, Chowell, Choles, there we go, and Jeremiah Manny. And then the second group, Larry Hatter, Nathan Guy, Nicole Swafford, and Tal Sampson. Like the previous group, you'll work alone. You're working your small groups for 25 minutes, and then we're going to put the 2 groups together. And hopefully you're going to be somewhat similar wavelengths, or you're going to have a hard job in the second part. The third group is much smaller. They're going to be tackling night vision. That's defined as modern night vision thermal rifle scopes. It was ranked as #3 in importance for you as a group to tackle. And night vision is opposed by 77% of Idaho hunters in the statewide survey. The current legal situation is it's unlawful when attached to or incorporated in a firearm. Assigned to this group is Bryce Oldemeyer, Hallie Hemingway, Ken Crane, and Kevin Rogers. Hallie has a question.
Yeah, I just had a question. I kind of missed it. You said something about how you decided where to put us in what group. Can you restate that?
I looked at how you ranked the technologies. And so everybody of these 3 technologies, everybody is in the group that you ranked highest of these 3 tonight.
Thank you.
So it may not be your number 1 or number 2, but it's higher than any of the other 3 that we're talking about tonight, according to your rankings.
Wendy, you have a quick clarification on this. The subject is night vision, but in the description, it's night vision and thermal rifle scopes. And since thermal optics was used, are we supposed to focus on night vision both attached to a rifle as well as handheld, like as a large umbrella topic, or is this focused on rifle scopes, whether that has night vision or thermal technology to it?
I might ask Greg if he can help us understand the distinction. They were ranked separately in the survey and separately when you prioritized last meeting. So Greg, do you have any clarifications?
Well, I think this would lean toward a night vision or thermal scope. So its scope is going to be on your rifle or on your firearm or weapon. And then if you go back to the thermal, this is thermal, but it's talking about optics. But I think otherwise you're going to get too crosswise. I think it would be better to treat the second one as just night vision. So this would be the thermal optics, and then the third one would be night vision.
So that would be whether it's rifle mounted or otherwise then. So like thermal imaging optics would be rifle mounted or not. And then the night vision would be night vision, whether it's rifle mounted or not. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. That sounds good.
So again, the assignment is to look at what the current regulation looks like and what you would recommend as a working group about that technology. So just one more time to remind you what your task is to work together to come up with what you think you would like the working group as a whole to consider as a draft recommendation. We'll pull you back in 50 minutes to have the same sort of discussion that we had related, like we did for the principals. Figure out who your spokesperson is going to be. And I need you to send any draft recommendations that you come up with to me, within the next 24 hours. So does that make sense to everybody as an assignment? Okay, so Connor is going to send you off to breakout rooms. You won't come back to this plenary session for 50 minutes, with the exception of the group that's going to stay here. But so for drones and thermal imaging, you're going to be in one small group for a while, and then the 2 small groups will get together. I just want to give you the chance to talk with not a lot of people. 10 people seemed like a lot. Hallie has a question, or did you already ask that question, Hallie?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm understanding correctly. So, the group I'm in is only considering night vision handhelds and night vision rifle scopes. Is that correct? Or are we considering thermal rifle scopes? I mean, in the survey that went out, this is the way that it said it: modern night vision and thermal rifle scopes. So, scopes. But I don't know if we want to change that from the way that the survey ordered it. Just trying to make sure I know my assignment.
It's completely okay if your recommendations resemble each other.
Okay.
That would be fine outcome. I'm just splitting it out the way it was split out in the survey and the way you guys ranked them last time. You people, not guys.
So that's kind of where I was coming from too, that we're talking two technologies here. But I think when we get done discussing these issues, that we're probably going to come together.
Mm-hmm. Maybe more than some of the other topics.
I think so.
Yeah. Okay, this is what you were put together to do. So let's get working on what you want to recommend.
I don't see the group I'm in. Am I missing something here?
Mine sent me to the wrong group.
This is the night vision group. Bryce, Hallie,
Okay. I don't
Ken.
go anywhere.
I got sent to the wrong group. So then I clicked out and it sent me to this group. So how do I
Okay.
get?
Well, you're where are you supposed to be?
I'm supposed to be in drones.
Okay.
But it
Can,
sent my
I'll take care
can
of that
you
one,
move
Wendy.
him, Connor?
Yep.
That's Jason Top speaking. Okay, thank you.
Drones 1, correct?
Yeah.
Yes. You are small because Kevin Rogers isn't here tonight, so you only have 3. But I'm gonna mute myself and let you work.
Well, Ken and Hallie, do you have thoughts, initial thoughts?
Well, I think this is going to be one of our challenges. I'm trying to get back. I took a picture of the rule.
Currently, it's just defined as it's not legal to have it attached to a rifle. So handheld is currently legal.
Yeah, you can have it in the field with you. You just can't attach.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and I think we had a recent example over here locally that I think is the quandary. So, some of the guys were out hunting coyotes with, I don't know if they had thermals or night vision scopes, but they found a lion, a large tom, at night in their scope and were able to take it. But they, which I don't think is legal, but theoretically they were hunting legal until they shot the cat. And so I think this is the quandary of how do you enforce this and and keep everybody honest in this deal, because that technically the rules there you can't do that, but somebody did. And so how do you regulate that and enforce it in the field?
So I think that might be a good follow-up to a broader discussion of, does using night vision technology not attached to your rifle, I mean, it's already illegal to do that, which you just talked about, Ken. But does having that and using that technology not attached to a firearm cross the line of being considered fair chase or ethical under everything that we kind of just highlighted as a group? I think that's really, and I think I'd like to discuss after we get into the weeds of that, kind of the enforcement side of it and what recommendations could look like so it might be more enforceable. But just stepping back to the bigger question is, do we feel like having and using the technology not attached to your rifle, is that outside of the scope of fair chase or ethical pursuit of animals?
I do. I think, yeah, I think that, you know, you think about the questions or the statements that we just developed and how we would judge whether what we're forwarding is meeting, you know, the intent. And I see that it violates 3 or 4 of them straight out. The ethical fair chase, it's going to limit our opportunity to maintain what we have today moving forward. And then the question there, I think the last group had about, is this surpassing the animal's ability to escape and use its natural senses to survive? And to me, it's a blatant failure on every one of those points.
I guess
I
I
would,
just,
go ahead, Ellie.
So I mean, on the thermals and the night vision attached to a gun, obviously that's already illegal. And I think it should stay that way, mostly from a safety standpoint. In my mind, you know, thermals on a scope, you cannot identify what that is with a thermal. You can see there's a heat signature, but you can't tell what it is if it's further than 100 yards away. So we shouldn't be using those on our rifles for big game hunting. Now, for coyote hunting and wolf hunting, I think we need to do everything we can with our predator management. So I support those being legal for coyotes and wolves. As far as the handheld devices, I'm having a hard time getting to where you are, Ken. I mean, I think I understand where you're coming from, but I also think that, you know, a simple spotting scope fits those same things that you're talking about, where you can see an animal and it can't detect that you're there. So I guess I'm having a hard time getting there on the handheld devices. And I guess the other thing that I've thought a lot about, you know, since we started having these meetings, is 2 things. The enforceability part of this, I really don't like adding more regulations that aren't enforceable. And from the presentations that we've received, it seems that this isn't enforceable, you know, a handheld device anyway. And then the other piece of it to me is that for us to recommend a change or a, you know, an additional regulation, it seems that there should be something to back that up. So the data that we received from Toby on hunter success rates and populations didn't seem to justify that to me. So I don't know, that's kind of where I'm at.
Maybe to help explain kind of where I'm thinking that even the handhelds surpass the laugh test for me, is that it's, to me, darkness and cover, that's the safety zone for animals, right there. It's being able to hide and have a safe refuge. To me, thermals and night vision eliminate that cover. So to me, it's like clear cutting. So you would go out and clear cut, remove all the vegetation everywhere, so you can see any animal that's existing on the surface out there, to give you the advantage. To me, that's what those technologies do.
I mean, you can't see through cover with a thermal or a night vision.
Yeah, you can. Infrared, you sure can.
Thermal imaging can't see through. It can only see what you could see with your eye, because it's the same wavelengths. They can't travel through a tree or a piece of brush.
But infrared and heat seeking or heat sensing does, right?
No, the thermals don't. The thermal wavelengths don't penetrate objects. Does that make sense?
No.
If it was fully covered, like say you're standing behind a door or a thin sheet of paper, as long as the heat signature wasn't right up against that thin sheet of paper and the heat signature was going through that, it would not get picked up through thermal imaging.
If a deer is standing behind a tree, you cannot see it. If a deer is standing even behind brush, you can't see it with a thermal.
But yeah, that I agree on all that. I still think that the advantage that night vision and thermal provides at distance and at nighttime is significant for an unfair advantage for a hunter effectively using that to locate animals and pursue them. I understand the enforceability of it, but I also think two things, well, a couple things backing up. One, I do agree enforceability would be very difficult. And again, it's out of our scope to say or provide, I guess, recommendations on how to make things more enforceable or some of the fines associated with blatant violation of regulations that got proposed or implemented. But I think having that in the regulation so it is evident for the law-abiding citizens or hunters who are going to see the regulations and say, yeah, we're not supposed to use thermal optics, or we're not supposed to use night vision to aid in our pursuit of wild game. That will at least keep them honest. There's going to be the 5 or 10% who don't care one way or the other. But I think one of the things where we haven't, well, two things, talking about the effects of advancements in technology on harvest is really hard to parse that out in data. I don't think the conclusions of the prior discussions or data that were presented was that they don't have an effect. It's just there's a lot of other natural variation occurring and changes in regulation and management. It's hard to point to advances in technology resulting in huge changes at a population level. I would say that thermals and night vision are a new technology that until the last 5 years haven't been affordable for folks. But now you can pay $2,000-$3,000 and get really nice commercial grade thermal night vision. And that's only going to get cheaper and become more prevalent. Like that's at least one of the technologies that we'll discuss that Pandora's box hasn't been open to a level. I think we should just not acknowledge it, but I don't know. Those are just some rambling thoughts. I'm kind of in line with Ken on as far as what we discussed just earlier. Night vision and thermal optics, either on a rifle or not, provide an unfair advantage in the pursuit of wild game.
I'll take your opinion.
Yeah.
I guess another thing that I've thought of too is that, the survey that was sent out, there was about, I had it written down, but I lost it. 75, I think it was 76% of people, when they asked that question, is it ethical to use a thermal imaging device? They said no, right? They were against it. So remember, they talked about if you make something illegal, then 80% of people will follow that. It seems that 80% almost of people are already against using that, or they think it's not ethical. And where it's not, when we're not seeing hunter success rates rising, 75 or 80% of people already think it's unethical, which to me means they're not using it. It just seems a little bit premature to me to ban something when we don't have evidence that we need to. Does that make sense?
Well, I get where you're going with that. I guess I'm yeah, I don't know how to explain it, but I've talked to a bunch of folks that, you know, and I kind of tend to go along that line too, that I'm not feeling that perhaps our survey captured all the nuances of how some of these technologies and such are being used and the outcomes of them in the field. And so I think there's some folks that are highly effective at this stuff and can really make a difference. Whereas the rest of us that fit in the 80% are not going to go there because we know it's not legal, or we don't feel it's fair chase, or we just aren't interested. But
so at that point, does it come down to I don't know, is it coming down to more of a, well, that guy has it and I don't, so it's a competition between hunters thing more than I don't know.
Well, it could be, you know, and I've got a bunch of friends that trap and like to hunt coyotes by calling, but they say it's almost worth not going after coyotes anymore in a lot of these places because the guys hunting with night vision and infrared are cleaning up the coyotes, and it's not worth your effort to go out. The coyotes are educated to calling, so they're really difficult to hunt. And then there's just not enough of them to justify your time in running trap lines. And they're correlating a lot of that to this big push in some of these new technologies that they're using for coyotes.
Yeah, and I mean, I would, you know, I would never support thermals or night vision on a rifle for big game. That would never, I mean, I think we should keep that the way it is now. The thing about a handheld, you know, say night vision or thermal, is that even if you use that to find something, right, you still have to put that down, and then you have to find it with your binoculars or your spotting scope, and then you have to find it with your scope. So it's different to me than having it on the rifle, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, I agree totally. Yeah.
I don't know where we go from here.
So I'm sorry, I'm still just thinking through some of the discussion. I'm still tuned in.
So it's been the three of us chatting away here. Is there somebody else in our group that's not? I thought we had more folks in our group than three of us.
There was a fourth person who didn't attend tonight.
Oh, okay.
So
I see other names. These must be.
they're members of the public. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kevin Rogers is not here.
I mean, maybe, so we can think about what we agree on, maybe. Like on keeping scopes, night vision and thermal scopes, keeping them illegal for big game hunting. Do we agree on that? Maybe.
Yeah. And to maybe qualify some of the where I'm thinking too is that it, to me, if it was a perfect world, we say we don't even have that allowed in the field. But the problem with that is that it's not just deer and elk season, it's still wolf season and coyote season. And so is that unfair to say we can't even have it in the field? I don't know. I think that's something we have to talk about, but because it's like that scenario I described earlier. The opportunity was there, so these guys took advantage of it, right? They weren't out there hunting illegally, but this situation showed up that they couldn't find themselves to pass, and so they broke the rules. And so that's kind of, do we just eliminate the opportunity for bad choices to be made, or do we trust that people are going to make the right decisions?
Yeah, and I don't know where that 80% idea comes from, but I guess those guys aren't the 80%. I don't know.
Yeah, in that situation for sure. But and I
And I
hate
guess
blanket
that
rules.
maybe. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I said I hate blanket rules. We see them imposed all the time, and they're not fair to the people that are trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess another thing that was surprising to me about the survey was that, there were a large majority of people that answered in that survey that they thought certain things were unethical, right? There was a list of things, same ones we're considering now, that they thought were unethical. But then when they asked the question, and the way it was phrased, it even said, if hunter success rates are increasing, so it said that right up front, if they were increasing because of these technologies, would you want to ban them or consider changes to technology? And a large majority, again, of the respondents said that they wanted everything to stay the same, even if hunter success rates were increasing. That was surprising to me because I came into this group thinking that maybe hunter success rates were increasing, and that's why, we were having this discussion. So anyway, that was just surprising to me that most people said, no, we want things to stay the same.
And I think that's, an example of the limitations of surveys, because you can't ask everything the correct way to get every nuance out. And then the use of statistics, right? So to me, it's like, it's hunter success increasing. And then are you looking at the percentage or the numbers? Because 10% of 1,000 hunters is a lot different than 10% of 3,000 hunters. And then also it's like, what are the numbers being killed? Are they the demographics of the animals that are being killed? So are we getting the cross section of the animals that we need to manage herd size and buck to doe ratios and mature bucks, those sort of things? Are all those playing out correctly? And so these are some things that we didn't tease out in the statistics that were given us or in the surveys that were put out. It's hard to get that detailed.
Yeah, and that was another surprising thing to me, was just the data that was presented to us. And this probably isn't even within our scope, but one thing that I did think of is it would be nice if Fish and Game could have better data. And I don't know if that's something that we can do as a group or recommend. I know the legislature is the one that kind of squashed the mandatory hunter report idea. So I don't know if us making a recommendation to make that mandatory again is even, legitimate. But Fish and Game definitely could have better data to make decisions based on.
Yeah, I think even just collecting that data, if it was mandatory or forced, would be very challenging because you'd have to get into the nuances of, well, what was your rifle like that you harvested your animal with? Did you use a rangefinder or not, or thermal optics or not? So the survey would be really,
Yeah, I wasn't even thinking that. I was just thinking straight up hunter success numbers. Because I mean, we have those and they're
Yeah.
extrapolated, and I'm sure they're close to reality.
Yeah.
I trust the way that models work, but just, you know, if everyone had to fill out a hunter success survey, it would be better data than
Yeah,
what we
agreed.
have now.
So did we answer everything we were supposed to be looking at? I see the monitor watching us, but I'm not sure.
So I guess we're supposed to, do you want me to type up that I mean, is it even a recommendation if we just recommend to keep things the way they, you know, the rifle scope? I don't know if you need to recommend that, if it's already that way. I don't know.
Well, and I think well, we all agree that that rule needs to stay. I think for me, the question is there a way to modify it, add to, or change somehow that would make it more effective in the field for people to comply with, but also for law enforcement to, determine whether it was being used properly and then be able to prove it? All those are completely different questions.
Yeah, I mean, I was really surprised to hear of all of the limitations of a conservation officer, you know, and I think that goes back to the legislature. It seems that they've kind of pulled a lot of the teeth out of what they can do. So
Yeah, I was shocked when Greg said that a game warden couldn't ask for your gun to check for steel or plugs.
yeah, that surprised me.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's changed because I think many years ago they could. So
I always assumed. I never really felt like I had a lot to hide though, so I wasn't afraid to.
yeah.
Yeah, I think the only way to provide a recommendation to make it more enforceable would be for folks who are using night vision for predator hunting to get some type of permit or special use case provided by Fish and Game, which again
I
would,
mean, you already have to hunt at night.
Yeah, I
Definitely.
thought so.
You have to have a permit to hunt at night.
okay, gotcha.
So
So at that point, I don't know how you could do any more enforcement or provide other type of regulations or recommendations to be able to allow or provide more, I don't know, tools for law enforcement to actually implement the regulation.
and that example you gave of the folks shooting a mountain lion, is that something you just heard about, or did they get caught doing that?
No, it was just word of mouth.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much that it's, yeah, it comes back to ethics, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know, all the facts either. I mean, people tell stories, right? So, but I mean, it makes a good example that, it's they could have done everything right. I don't know for sure. I've heard several different versions, and but the fact is they saw a critter at night, and to me, whether they, the fact that they got it later, to me, that was an advantage they would not have had otherwise.
Oh, so they didn't shoot it at night? They
I
shot it
don't
in
know.
the
I don't know
night?
all the facts.
Yeah.
It's I've heard it go both ways. So
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
The stories get bigger and bigger.
they do. Yeah. Yep. Internet's always correct though. But
I mean, it is a little interesting to me. Yeah. Yeah, it's I'm not sure if making a recommendation to leave rifle scope, night vision and thermal rifle scopes on the illegal list is a recommendation, or if being silent is that recommendation. I'm not sure.
Well, I think we will probably have a whole summary of everything discussed and presented, just so even if it's a non-recommendation, the commission knows we discussed it as a topic from the work group. So I guess, Hallie, in a similar vein, so is your perspective the same as far as thermal optics? Night vision and thermal fall into the same category of they don't provide an unfair advantage in finding or pursuing animals?
You mean just a handheld device?
Yeah, like, I mean, deer and elk can't see in thermal or infrared or night vision. Humans and hunters walking around, it seems like kind of under some of the discussion of like, well, it's out of the sensory criteria, or like the sensories, like senses available to other animals, that this technology is giving us a significant advantage potentially.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I mean, I'm a remote sensing person. Like that's what I do for part of my work. So I think about the light spectrum, right? So these are all on the light spectrum, visible, they're all on the light spectrum. So, sensing one part of the light spectrum different than sensing another part.
I mean, for our eyeballs, it is.
Right, our eyeballs can't, but my eyeballs also can't see, 1,000 yards away, and I can with my spotting scope. And spotting scopes are fine. So that's where it kind of falls down for me.
yeah,
Well,
it's like a step too far. Where is that one? Where's that line, right?
And then, when you come back to the enforceability angle, I think there's so many regulations that are already enforceable. Adding more just seems, I don't know.
So here's another question. So say we fast forward 10 years, technology costs $400 to buy high-end, nice thermal optics or infrared, like it's a rangefinder. Do you think that there would be people just driving around at night, scouting and looking for animals if the technology, nothing was implemented for regulation, and it was just, we'll let things take its course is that like a hunting landscape or in line with like traditional hunting that not only the public would get behind, but also like just general hunting community and like the hunting, yeah, public, I guess. Does that make sense? Like, because that I could very well see this being like technology is going to get cheaper. People are going to use it because it's available and attainable. And there's a lot of good uses that would provide you information to help dictate where you're going to hunt the next morning, how you're going to hunt it, how you're going to approach it, whether there's, I don't know, a whole herd on a hillside or not, or bulls hanging out somewhere, things along those lines. Does that not concern you, or do you not think that is a plausible place that we could end up once the genie's out of the bottle? Because it's the one technology or some of like the few technologies where it's not commonplace for everyone, like a rangefinder, but in 3 to 5 years, it probably could be. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I guess, you know, that's why I said it seems premature at this point, because you know, it's if at some point in the future Fish and Game sees this start showing up in hunter success rates, you know, if we're sitting at, I think he said around 20% or something for elk, maybe, you know, if that starts rising dramatically, then obviously, okay, we need to do something. I
mean,
guess the other thing too is that, you know, you driving around with a thermal, you can only tell what something is if it's very close to you.
I mean,
because I'm thinking like, you know, in the daytime, if someone is using a thermal, they can see a heat blob, basically. And then they pull up their binoculars and look and figure out what it is. At night, you see a heat blob and you don't know what it is because you can't look with your binoculars and figure out what it is.
I mean, you could look at a lot of open grass hillsides along a timber edge and see across a canyon that there's 5-10 specks on that open hillside grazing, and plausibly figure out that, yeah, there's a herd of elk working that timber patch or up in that canyon. You might not be able to see that it's a giant bull or a handful of bulls or whatever it is, but you could still use that to inform where you would hunt and how you would hunt that. And the other thing too is like hunter harvest and success hasn't changed that much to some degree in the data, but the seasons have significantly changed to reduce that hunter success and provide those additional opportunities, right? Like comparing hunter success when you could hunt, I don't know, in the middle of the rut with a general tag versus now, and how seasons continually get smaller, and it's in hunter harvest still kind of stays the same. Fish and Game manages those seasons to kind of hit that sweet spot of hunter success. So the fact that opportunities are declining, tags are declining, and seasons are getting shorter to meet that harvest objective, I think is a reflection of hunters getting more efficient with the technology at hand under harder or shorter seasons. Does that make sense?
Yeah, there's
I mean, are you talking like from the 80s till now? Or are you talking like, because I like the data that Toby gave, I think it was like 2011 till now. But you know, obviously the seasons, you know, were a lot different when you could hunt the whole state with one tag, you know.
Yeah, and the deer seasons used to be quite a bit longer too. They used to extend into November,
Yeah,
you
the mule
know,
deer
and
seasons are definitely.
yeah, that was a game changer when you could hunt them in the 1st of November. So a question here, and I'm still learning a lot about this technology and figuring it out and trying to figure out what's important or not. But for the night vision, that's essentially like looking out through the scope. It'd be like using a spotlight, is how I understand that. You're looking out in a field at some critters, and it's just like shining a light on them. So it's not legal to go out and spotlight. You can't drive down the road and shine your light around in the fields to look at critters. So why would we think it's okay to use a thermoscope to do that?
I mean, I guess it's a difference between shining a light and absorbing light.
Well,
That makes sense.
Well, that's, to me, that's semantics though, because you're still, the end effect is that you're looking at that animal that's out there and you're seeing what it is, and you can see really good. I've looked at some thermal or night vision imaging, and it's like looking into daylight. I mean, that big buck was standing out there, you could score him and you knew exactly what was there. So why is that okay and not, and then having a great big old 10,000 lumen spotlight, or that's not a very big one these days, but whatever, you know, and having that out shining in the field?
I mean, there was the one guy that so when you're shining a spotlight, obviously it's disturbing the animal. When you're using these other technologies, it's not disturbing them. I guess I don't know what you're asking, because if you're looking at something at night, you're not hunting. You can't shoot that thing at night.
No, but you know he's there, and then you can sit and watch him until it gets light and then shoot him.
I guess that maybe works where you live. It doesn't work where I live. It's too thick. I mean, I would never. The
Well, I
animal
think
doesn't
out
stand
here in the
still all
desert, I
night.
think it's pretty common in the egg fields.
All night.
You're up north?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in Kettle Falls. I don't know if you know where that's at.
Yeah. I grew up in southeast Idaho, so I know what that's like. Down
Yeah,
there, it's open.
well, Kettle Falls is northeast Washington. It's north of Spokane.
Yeah.
And it's all timber with egg fields. And so my redneck friends, that was spotlighting, was a pretty good time for them. But to me, I mean, the spotlight, yep, they see you shine the light around and they know something's going on. But to me, it's even more of an advantage to us if we're using night vision, because they have no way to know we're even using that and looking at them.
I guess I just don't think. I mean, obviously we don't know how many people are using these things. But I have a hard time thinking that there's very many people that are sitting out there at night using night vision.
It's not that they're not necessarily doing it right now, but they will do it. Like, it will become a thing. Like, when it gets cheaper and more accessible, people will use it. Like, is what will happen. It's like rangefinders. It's like all the other advancements in technology with turrets on scopes and shooting long distances. It will become more mainstream as it becomes more accessible. And it's whether there's a whole horde of folks doing it right now, I don't think is necessarily where we need to be focused. It's where are things going to be in 5 or 10 years, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and the commission's not going to revisit this every 2 or 3 years. They will say, we discuss this, we'll revisit it when it seems necessary, or 5 years down the road when new technologies come up, because this will just get lumped into a technology already discussed and provided recommendations from the work group. So I would say, like, looking at where things could or will likely go is more important, especially now, than just looking at, well, who's using it, or is it something that's even worth discussing in the current situation?
Yeah, I think you're right.
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think he's right that like us being preemptive, being proactive instead of reactive. Once it's out there and too far gone, there's really not a whole lot you can do about it. And so I think you're right that Bryce, that looking ahead and being thoughtful and proactive will get us farther.
Is it I'm just wrapping my head around trying to where you're coming from. So is it more concerning to you for people to use these things at night to locate and scout? Is that?
Yeah, at night. And also, I mean, it could be really effective midday too, where I don't know, say you're hunting a similar area as someone else and they have thermal and you don't, they can essentially skip the skill set or the I guess the time of actually glassing with binos or spotter, pull out a thermal scope and be like, nope, nothing's here, or like, doesn't seem like there's that much going on, and move on. So it provides an advantage over the current technologies that's fairly significant. But I mean, my thing is, and the way I could see it really getting abused is for identifying where our animals are at night and then sitting on top of them or getting out there and just sitting on them for the 2 hours prior to daylight. They have no idea you're there. Sun comes up and you're out of leveraging the technology, you're significantly increasing your odds of where that animal is and then harvesting as soon as the sun comes up. Whereas now you have to hike around or glass when the sun comes up, and they're either there or they're not, but you're just skipping all the hard work and the leg work of actually having to hunt during daylight versus using this technology as an unfair advantage of locating animals and essentially sitting on them for hours in the dark. And that's where I'm coming from. I mean, that's like how I hunt and how I can see the technology being used. Like it would be, I mean, super effective to have a late season cow hunt and cold, snow everywhere. You could drive out, probably scan entire basins, see exactly where the herds of elk are, and you just go hike up there and you sit and wait and then shoot one as soon as the sun comes up. And that will happen. Like people will do that. If the technology gets cheap enough and accessible enough, that's just going to be how people hunt like that.
And Hallie, I think you're right that, it's like, what's the difference in doing that and then during the daytime sitting in that same spot and scanning that basin with your binoculars and spot and scope to find them. And I think the question is how far are we willing to let the technology go to keep giving us that advantage or to reel back? And because if we'd had this conversation 40, 50 years ago, when binoculars and spotting scopes were becoming more available and more affordable to the average guy like they are today, like Bryce is talking, future is likely to happen with these thermals and night vision scopes, that they just become an everyday tool that everybody has, that it would be a significantly different playing field for us to go out and hunt animals without spotting scopes or binoculars, because instead of looking out 2 miles away and finding them and then determining whether the buck or bull's big enough that we want to go after it, we would have to walk however far that was to get close enough to see the animal, and then have to get close enough to determine if it met the criteria for what we were looking for to try to harvest it. And yeah, if we want to manage success rates, we could dial all that back too. But I guess that would be a pretty hard sell at this point. Whereas if we're talking on how to look forward on these burgeoning technologies, on how to manage them and control them moving forward, at least we're setting that gate there now. Whereas in another 10 years, it might be too late to reel it back, like we would probably never be able or want to do with binoculars.
So I guess bringing this kind of full circle, since we're short on time, I think we're in agreement on the technology on a rifle, and that it should not be regular, or should not be allowed. Keep the current regulations. And I guess, Hallie, if there's no way to persuade you otherwise, this would be a topic that wouldn't ever come to consensus on handhelds. So there's no recommendation provided. And it's just that's where that discussion ends.
Oh, they're snapping us back to the other room.
We are all back. Were you ready to come back?
Sure.
Yeah, close enough.
This is where being a facilitator is hard, making a guess at how much time you're going to need to have a discussion. So please feel free to share a little bit about the process and whether you thought you had adequate amount of time to do the work that you were assigned to do. We'll start with report from the thermal imaging optics mega group, large group. Who's reporting for you all?
I can do that, Wendy.
Okay, Rob.
So both of the subgroups came together and had pretty much the same language. And the recommendation, thermal imaging recommendation, quote, "It is unlawful to use thermal imaging technology for scouting, hunting, or retrieving big game animals during the hunting season or within 2 weeks preceding the start of the season."
Okay. Questions from the folks that were not in that group? Does anyone in that group want to elaborate on what Rob reported? Looks like Nathan has his hand up.
I don't know how to raise my Zoom hand, so.
Yeah, it's okay. I could see your hand.
Where did you guys, or how did you guys discuss the 2 week? Did it start at 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 1 week? How did you guys kind of come to that? I'm just curious.
So the debate centered around, and anybody in the group, if I oversimplify this, jump in, please. The debate in the group was staying within the confines of our working group, which was big game. And then, and I may oversimplify this here, but the idea of the 2 weeks was to get away from the ugly situation of having a ban on that technology just during the season, and the night before the season, you got everybody and their brother out with their gear. So that was kind of a tip of the hat toward either doing it during a whole season or just doing it with the species. The other thought in it is that if you allowed people to scout up until 2 weeks before the season, you weren't excluding people who had bought thermals, for example.
Jeremiah?
So did your group take away the recovery of animal using thermals?
What do you mean take away? Yeah, our recommendation would be You can't use the technology for scouting, hunting, or retrieving big game animals during the hunting season.
Okay, I understand that. The only reason I state that is I know within 72 hours you can use bloodhounds to go track animals down. So you're using dogs to recover, because recovery is our main goal here, right? So that's what I was just kind of curious on, if you guys consider that as well.
So essentially, Rob, you can't have that technology in the field during a big game season.
Yes.
Strictly within the confines of our focus of our group being big game. The idea of your cross tag holders did come up, but that's one of those things we're not going to be able to get away from.
So just a reminder, these are preliminary draft recommendations. They're not the product of the group yet, right? So go ahead, Jeff.
So is the scope, is that hunting and non-hunting public that this would apply to? So no one in the field, or just someone who, I mean, how do you distinguish?
Someone who is engaged in the legal act of hunting, in the legal definition of hunting, in the as the state of Idaho defines it.
So if I
Is
went
how I
up,
would take
if I went up camping for a weekend, even during hunting season, didn't have any hunting gear with me, I could pull in, go camping, drive around, use my thermal, and go home and come back the next week and go hunting.
Not necessarily. That's where that 2-week provision would come into.
And the
Or
idea,
during the
Jeff,
actual season.
and the idea, Jeff, is when we discuss this as a group, Chief of Enforcement Wooten at our last meeting talked about 80% compliance with the rules, where the bulk of your public goes by the rule. So that's why we didn't make it a blanket. You just can't have them during this time frame.
Hallie?
Did you say Hallie?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. I'm just wondering if you guys talked about, you know, coyote hunters, wolf hunters. They're all going to be out there during those same hunting seasons using these technologies. So a blanket ban might not help with our predator management.
Well, and that's again where, yes, Allie, to answer your question, yes, we did talk about predator hunting. We did not expand it because we felt like it was outside of the scope of the group. And number two, the 80% compliance that you're setting a standard. We understand that won't be easy to enforce, but you're setting a standard where the bulk of the people follow that standard. I think it's how I understood our thought process.
Matt?
Yeah, I mean, part of that, Hallie, as we talked about, is certain areas it's going to be really tough, like northern Idaho, Chalice, Salmon area, where there is a heavy wolf numbers, and there is a lot of wolf hunters that are going to be out there. There's going to be a lot of those people out there in those fields. So that's the tough part. That doesn't, probably 80% of the or 60% of the state, they're not going to have very many issues, but some of the state, they're going to have there's going to be a lot of gray area on that for the wolf hunters that are wolf hunting and elk hunting or deer hunting for sure. And as far as the time frame, it got to where we talked about if it was like someone had a rifle tag and it was archery season still and they was out there in that little time frame, that's where kind of that 2 weeks came in, because it was too close to the two seasons. And so that's why they was going for the 2 weeks rather than, a shorter time there. But those are the hard spots for sure, especially in wolf country. That's tough because they're going to be out there with them anyway.
Ken?
Well, I think they kind of got to, because my question was kind of in the same line. It was like, all right, so I get it and I appreciate it. And honestly, if, and I said it in our group, if perfect world, I'd say we wouldn't have this technology in the field during big game season, just to take away the inherent opportunity that ends up showing up when tempting somebody that otherwise wouldn't break the rules. If it's not with them, they aren't going to use it. But I mean, there's a lot of coyote hunters out there and such that during that same time frame that we would be taking away the prime pelt season for those guys that hunt at night. And so I could see, because we have a big game season starting August through January in southern Idaho, and that's taken out the fur hunters. And I could see that being very unpopular.
It's still open for predator hunting, still open for small game. It's when they are actively pursuing the other, but
So
So
let's get one more comment from Dylan and then we're gonna move on.
So I was not part of that group, but my recommendation for that is that I don't think we even need to worry about it. I think it's outside the scope. So the scope of what we're tasked with is big game, and not just big game, but big game ungulates. So that does not include lions and wolves, doesn't include predators. That's not our problem. That's the Fish and Game's problem to come up with the rule and to make it work and fit accordingly. Our scope and the part of this working group, or at least how I see it from what we were given when we took on this role, was to discuss big game ungulates. And those big game ungulates, that rule, the way that you guys discuss the rule would only affect, our proposal should say that it affects the animals in our scope. That's my 10 cents on that, I guess.
Okay. Let's hear next from the drones group.
I can talk on our first subgroup if we want. We agreed in
Did
99.
you come together or not really?
No, we did.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, we had two thoughts. One was an outright ban, like July 31st, December 31st, or 30 days before each season, because it's kind of a rolling season across the state. There's all different seasons all over. So just no drones, period, 30 days before that start of the season. So there's the same exact thing, just two different on the start date.
Was there a second proposal from the drone group?
That was both.
Oh, that was combined. Okay, so
Yeah.
it's just a question of whether it's a blanket season or a starting date, 2 weeks.
30 days.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And by
Questions for the
blanket,
drone group?
and by blanket, again, inside the scope of our working group.
Okay. Hallie?
Sorry. Can you just elaborate on what that means? Like no drones over the forest? No drones? What does that mean?
Can't use them to scout, to recover, to look at. Right now, the current rules, there's a lot in there for the current rules, but it doesn't regulate you for scouting, and it gives you one
And
calendar day.
using the next day. Okay.
Yeah, so now we just upped it to 30 days or a blanket thing, and then you can't use them to recover.
Okay. Yeah. So it applies to scouting, hunting, locating animals. Okay. Just there's a lot of drone use in forestry that has nothing to do with hunting. So yeah.
Yep. Again, just the scope of our working group. Yep.
Derek?
Sorry, I didn't hear what Nathan said as far as the calendar items or what came to mind, and it's not necessarily hunting, but a shed season with our antlered animals and the utilization of drones.
We talked about, like I said, 30 days before the certain season or a blanket July 31st, December 31st. So if it's 30 days beforehand and you have your shed or elk or deer, it rolls. So If you're in northern Idaho and your season's open till this is December 31st, but in southern Idaho, it ended October 24th, you can be out there taking pictures with your drone again, but not in
Right.
northern
Derek,
Idaho.
Derek is bringing up a good point there. I don't think we want people out there harassing game at the latter stages of winter when they're kind of at their most vulnerable. So I don't think we really took that into account when we talked about drones. So I think that's something we should maybe go back on and talk about a little bit.
We did discuss that in the other subgroup.
Okay, thanks, Alex.
Did you have a conclusion? Alex?
Oh, well, we kind of, in our subgroup, we kind of discussed basically banning the drones from, say 48 hours to a week before season's open. Like during an open season, it's banned, and then extending that through February or March while the deer are vulnerable, and then opening it back up. Basically including shed season with hunting as active hunting almost.
Could you throw in the whole shed hunting as possibly the whole molester, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that's already on the books as being illegal in the state of Idaho?
Well,
Would
you
that
can,
just be
but
more of getting aggressive on the enforcement of it?
I mean, honestly, it's just more of a including it in that, including that in the season because it's already illegal to molest. But if you're out there flying a drone around looking for sheds, it kind of opens up the ability to more. Like I said, enforcement's the issue there.
Chelsea?
Kind of per Dylan's previous statement, is shed hunting within our purview? I understand like that is an aspect of this that I didn't even think about, but is it something that we need to try to solve within our scope of work?
I don't think so. Personally, I think that's the fish and games part. Our scope is purely big game ungulates.
Agreed.
I think we're trying to take on more than we need to. I think it's just big game ungulates. That's all we need to worry about.
Shed hunting is big game ungulates.
Well, as Dylan said, it's not in our group, we don't need to actually set the dates. If we recommend having a season that there's a closure, that's our recommendation. They're going to change the dates no matter what we recommend either way. So we can just recommend a closed season and allow them to decide that season.
Jason?
I just wanted to get on here with Dylan. I agree with Dylan on this. It is just for the big game ungulates. We went pretty hardcore into the trapping side of this because I do that as well. And being able to use drones for that. So I think it is better just to set a season like they're talking or it's closed and let the fishing game decide what that season is and who it's going to be applied to.
Hey, anything else about the proposed or the preliminary draft recommendation related to drones? Okay, we have one more small but mighty group, the night vision group.
Yeah, I'll jump in there. So for discussions related to the recommendation of using night vision on a firearm, we essentially came to consensus that we'd like to keep or propose this current regulation where it is not allowed. We did not come to consensus on night vision not mounted to firearms and the use or potential restrictions or not on using that technology. So we don't have a good follow-up for the second part. Yeah, Dylan.
What was you guys didn't come to consensus? What was the hang up for the second for the not attached?
It was kind of twofold. One was kind of the enforceability of it. setting up a regulation that wouldn't necessarily be easily enforceable. The other argument was it falls in using the technology falls in line with having a similar advantage of using binoculars or spotting scopes. In that it is just using essentially different I don't know, bands, visual bands to identify and find animals. So similar to what's currently out there and available to do. And if other folks wanted to jump in the group and kind of elaborate on that, that'd be great.
Yeah, Bryce did a good job summarizing that. We talked about a lot. I was surprised we could use the entire 50 minutes, honestly, but we sure did. And the longer we went, it generated a different angle on the conversation. So, yeah, we agreed that, yeah, the current rules there are what they are. The difficulties enforcing it, and if there was some of the things we talked about there was, is there a way to tweak it or modify it to make it more useful in the field for law enforcement? We didn't really have an answer to that. But I think our hangup was just a little bit different viewpoints about, you know, what advantage this technology actually offered. And so it ranged from, you know, being, you know, a significant tool for the hunter out there to not really being much better than your binoculars and spotting scope. But I think one of the things that Bryce brought up was looking at this into the future. You know, right now everybody has binoculars and range finders and spotting scopes because they became affordable, where years ago they weren't. And now we have new technology coming on with thermals and night vision stuff that's right now a little out of reach for most people. But as years go along, it's gonna be more affordable, and it's gonna be a common tool, you know, that everybody has, because it is easy to have to acquire or affordable. So it's like, do we let this stuff just kind of creep, and these different little pieces keep adding, you know, that tool that makes it easier for hunters to acquire the animals? Or do we look forward, you know, be forward thinking and progressive in kind of checking that up and trying to keep that playing field a little more level into the future?
Well, thank you so much for your efforts tonight. Moving forward, you will get an assignment, and it will ask you to evaluate the preliminary draft recommendations that came up this evening using the principles that were discussed in the early part of the meeting. In order to do that, I am 100% reliant on you sending me what you came up with. So please don't forget to send that in. And then I will put together an assignment. We are not voting for in favor or opposed to the draft recommendations. What we're doing is we're using the principles that you talked about to consider them, so that you have good reasons for supporting what you support and good reasons for what you don't support moving forward. So you have defensible reasons for what you decide to do moving forward. So that doesn't mean that these recommendations are in a shape yet that they're worthy of consideration, whether you support them or not yet. They're in the works right now. Does that make sense to everybody? So it's a trial run. I have no idea how this is going to go. So going forward, this is the 27th. We have 3 more meetings. The next meeting, we will tackle 4 more of the technologies. when I sat down and looked at it, there was, the seventh one was very supported by a few people, and I was wanting to give you all an opportunity to work on something that mattered a lot to you. So we'll see. And then we're going to start putting things together to see whether there's enough that you can agree on to move forward with. I really need some feedback tonight on how this process worked and how much time I gave you to do your work. So what are your thoughts about how this process worked and how I can improve on it for the upcoming meetings?
I guess real quick, I thought it went pretty well. I hope we have enough time left.
Yeah.
As far as we only have, a few meetings left, so a little unfortunate there. But I am glad that we're starting on this in the breakout rooms. I thought that went pretty well. I appreciate you trying to get us in a little bit smaller groups so we can have kind of a kickoff and then bringing it together. So I get that. That makes sense. And it's just going to be time, I think, going forward. Because we went through 3 of them today, and we didn't by any means come to consensus, and we went through a whole meeting. So
yeah. Ken?
So you and some of the others, Greg and company, were able to kind of observe, big groups and little groups. I feel I was fortunate to be in a smaller group, because it's hard, because we had constant conversations, and it helped me to kind of gel a little bit better in my mind, some of these things. But in a bigger group, it's hard to kind of have the full conversation and get around to what each individual really is kind of trying to figure out. So I'm curious if those bigger groups
Well,
were able to have
they
that
were
many
only
people.
big for half of the time.
Well, that's true.
Yeah. But it was, I'm curious about when you got together, whether it was a real mess.
No, it was.
It worked okay.
I like the smaller groups being merged into larger groups. I think being able to have a smaller focused idea and then bringing in those 2 ideas as a bunch, as opposed to 30 different ones, I
Yeah.
think helped streamline it a lot. It felt like there was a lot more that got accomplished by bringing 2 smaller groups together to form one larger than just throwing everybody into one large group.
Yeah. When I first looked at it and I thought 10 people, I thought that is not going to work. So I'm glad it did work pretty well. Jason?
Yeah, I thought the smaller groups worked well too. We were definitely having a lot of discussions on the drones there, and we ran out of time
Yeah.
basically in our small group because we were conversing the entire time. But I thought it was very good for all to do it that way. Maybe we make them 30 minutes instead of 25, give us an extra 5 minutes
Yeah.
on the next go around. But I like having those smaller groups and then the 2 groups
Coming
coming together for the bigger group at the end. Because then we could bounce off what each of us had to say. I thought it was pretty beneficial. It was interesting to me to see the diversity that I didn't think would actually be there going around. I was like, wow, I actually thought I was going to go a little bit different, but in the end, everybody seemed to come to a consensus. So that was a good first meeting, I think, in my opinion.
Good. Okay, well, I will, and you accepted the assignments I gave you? Next time, it's not going to be very many people getting their 1s and 2s. It's going to be dropping a little bit farther down your list. But out of 17, there's still a lot to work on that you thought was important. Jason, are you raising your hand again, or just it's still up?
I'm trying to shut it off and it keeps
Okay. Okay, I understand. 7 is kind of arbitrary as a stopping point, because there were 17 technologies, and I really don't know if it turns out that you're like-minded on your evaluations of what we've got, we may be able to get farther down the list than that. I just really wanted you to work on the things that you collectively thought were most important to work on. So,
So it's gonna be just these ones we just worked on tonight?
no, we've got 4 more next time.
And you sent that to us already?
No, I haven't. It's just the next, if we go back on the list.
I meant, I was talking about our assignment you were talking about.
On the assignment, you're just doing the 3 that we talked about tonight,
Yeah.
using the principles. So next time, we'll do artificial intelligence, transmitting trail cameras. Trying to see where we are on this list. At any rate, the next 4 ranked.
It was everything above an 8, right?
Yeah, the one that I was a little bit surprised by was transportation, because a few of you really thought that was important, so I wanted to get to that one. So, but that doesn't mean that's the place we'll stop. It's just, I'm trying to make sure you talk about the things that you thought were most important to talk about. We'll go as far as we possibly can in the amount of time that's available. Jeff.
So just to confirm, you're going to get information regarding what we came up with for principles. And then
Right.
you're going to get information from each of the groups on recommendations. And you'll put that together, and then you're going to send us an assignment
Exactly.
based on that. Okay, great.
So you're going to be using the principles to evaluate the draft recommendations.
Right.
So, okay, it's just a way to help you think them through. Okay.
And we'll
Go ahead.
And we'll be sending those all back to you before the next meeting, our assignments.
Yes, I'll give you a
Okay.
deadline so that I can then look at the results and share them with you.
Okay.
Anything else anybody needs to say tonight before we sign off?
No, you're doing a good job herding the cats. I kind of feel like we can get somewhere. It's still not going to be easy, but
No,
I
it's
see a
not.
method to your madness here.
Well, I hope so.
Thank you, Wendy. It was a great job. It was a great
Well, you're
job.
welcome. Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Wendy, as I'm looking at that chart again,
Uh-huh.
on our next 4 subjects, I'm pretty certain, and without calling for people to raise their hands, that there are some very passionate subjects that will not have been covered by the time those next 4 are we go over those next 4. So I would expect some people to want to talk about some other things that we need to make time for it in future meetings. I don't.
When I see the results from the homework, I'll be able to see whether there's patterns in what you're agreeing to. And that may mean that the 3 that we worked on tonight don't require a lot more work. I just don't know yet. I will support you going as far as you can into the list of 17. That's my goal. But I wanted you to talk about the things you thought were most important first. Hopefully you will also be learning how to reach agreement along the way. So, okay, everybody, thank you so much for your time this evening, and looking forward to seeing you on February 17th.